Do you like the loose effects in watercolor painting? Or perhaps you are still struggling with it? No matter what your level is, this class will help you understand the 3 important levels of looseness you can achieve in representational watercolor. Hi, I'm Leila, a professional artist. Welcome once again to my art studio. So today we're going to dive into the subject of looseness in watercolor, and I will show you 3 important steps for you to understand, and I will also show you 1/4 bonus technique as well, and that technique is already on the verge of abstract art and looseness. So please pay close attention to every single step that I show you, because each one of those has its own additives that you can add into paint, especially as we progress through those levels of loose painting. Like and subscribe to make it easier for yourself to find this channel in the future. Don't forget to share this video as well to make it easier for more people to dive into this refreshing pool of creativity in these art tutorials. For demonstration of the techniques, I'll be using these Lightwish brushes. I used one of their brushes previously in one of my videos, and I got so many questions about that brush from you guys. So I got in touch with the brand and they sent me this set of 4 brushes. I will leave all the details in the description box, and remember, they do not sponsor my videos and the links are non-affiliate, so they are just there for you if you'd like to know more information on these products that I'm testing out. These brushes come in a very interesting packaging. It will be perfect for anyone who likes to travel with their brushes, or perhaps likes to store them properly for a long-term storage. But always remember to wash your newly purchased brushes really well, because they come with that special brush glue that's applied to keep them safe in transit. I can tell that the quality of the bristle, which is artificial squirrel by the way, is the same as the brush that I got in that set that you guys were asking about. Now these brushes are so good. This is just the first impressions. Remember guys, if you'd like to know more, make sure to watch this video till the end. So here we have size 2, size 4, 6 and 8. This is also an incredible value. Actually, I'll tell you what, when I go to my art shop and I buy brushes that are suitable for watercolor, whether they're real bristle or artificial bristle mimicking, for example, squirrel or other animal fur, comparing those brushes to this, they seem really good, but also the price for the set of 4 brushes, less than half of what I would pay for 1 brush. So yeah, you really can't lose here, I think. I really like the handles as well. They are really nicely lacquered, very thick layer, and this other brush that I've been using for quite a few months now, the handle never cracked or anything like this. How sometimes brushes, you start to use them and they start to swell and the paint falls off and then it falls into your artwork and so on. That never happened with the brush that I've been using. These seem to be pretty much the same brush, just different sizes. Okay, so let's test them out in the actual artworks. The sketchbooks I will be using for today's tutorial also was sent to me by the Lightwish brand. Again, all the info, all the links you will be able to find in the video description box. This is a lovely cold pressed paper. This one you can see has side pockets here, little ones and the bigger ones, perfect for reference photos or any other sketches that you might like to store that you've done separately. A ring binder as well to add extra paper, remove paper and so on. Here we go, looseness level 1. You identify areas that you want to reserve for fluid color mixing. First, you cover these areas with a reasonable amount of water, and then you add paint to freely flow within the created boundaries. You can use one color or several and create as many of these loose pockets of paint as you want. They usually stay relatively small in relation to the size of the whole work. Here I am showing it to you in the form of simple petals. So, in the terminology of loose, this is one of the tightest ways to apply free-flowing watercolor. Anything tighter than that will not be flowing. This level is a great way for beginners to dip their toes into free-flowing techniques, so to speak, or for someone who is transitioning from acrylics or oil painting to watercolor. By the way, this brush is going great. It holds its shape well and has a perfect tip. Looseness level number 2 is a little bit more exciting, and I will be demonstrating it on this Lightwish sketchbook, which is also 100% cotton and 300 GSM cold-pressed watercolor paper. But the uniqueness of its format is absolutely mesmerizing. Lovely binding, and each leaf is perforated for easy removal. Just like the other book, it has a pocket for sketching references, or perhaps a mini watercolor palette, helpful elastic to hold the book safely closed. So level number 2 is where you are creating more looseness throughout your work by applying lots of moisture to larger areas of your artwork, or in case of something as little as this, covering the whole thing with a reasonable amount of water and immediately painting in the first layer, letting things spread in a loose way while you control the main color placement and saturation by choosing how much paint you apply and whether it's transparent, opaque, maybe granulating, and so on. Then you leave everything to dry, and your second layer is the one where you apply more control by creating sharper edges and also smaller pockets of free-flowing paint, kind of like what we did in our first looseness level. You can create details, shadows, color transitions, and finish up your artwork with more control versus when you have just started. For this technique, you'd be better off using artist or a better grade student watercolor, because low grade paint can affect the spreadability or intensity of the paint and make it more difficult, if not impossible, to work with. Good, strong watercolor paper is also important for this level. And I'm really enjoying this sketchbook. By the way, this artwork was mostly painted by this number 4 brush, and I love the versatility that you get with it, from perfect tip for detail to being a great water carrier in its belly. I only had to use this texture brush to create spray effect. Now, let's see what level 3 has to offer for you. By the way, if you'd like to see even more tutorials from this channel, and you love winning prizes, suggesting different video topics, or voting for your next favorite idea for the video, and so many other things, make sure to go over to my Patreon page, because all of those things are available there, along with feedback on your art if you'd like to, and many other things. And remember, by pledging on Patreon, you will be supporting this channel here, so I can make even more videos for you in the future. I really like the sketchbook paper that was sent to me, but for this demonstration I'm going to need a larger piece of paper, so I'm using a cold pressed 300 GSM Fabriano paper. I'm loosely sketching through my subject matter. You can do your regular way of sketching. I know some of you like transferring images, whatever floats your boat. You just, you do whatever you normally do. Even though it will be quite a loose artwork, it's still representational. So it has a lot of different details and other bits and pieces that I'd like to skip. I'm going to use this blocking medium to isolate certain areas. Another additive that I'll be using in this demonstration is granulating medium. Now remember, you don't have to use this if you don't want to. It is optional, but it's just that with this kind of looseness, this granulation can really bring out a lot of beautiful texture. For this tutorial, I'm going to use the third largest brush in the set, which is number 6. Normally, you can use anything you want to apply moisture, but because I'm testing these brushes out, I'm going to go with this brush. As always, first we want to apply lots of water and really saturate your paper. Now here I'm adding a little bit of salt. Again, this is something optional, but when you are using so much moisture, salt can create really beautiful effects. And always quite unpredictable. That's my favorite part about it. You never know what you're going to get. Everything would need to perfectly dry. So I'm going to leave this for, I don't know, a few hours to do its work. And for you, it's going to be probably a split second. It is very important to remove the salt before we start on the next layer. Otherwise, your painting will turn into a never-drying mess. But before I put on the next layer, as I said before, I'd like to reserve certain areas. So now I'm going to apply some masking fluid onto some lighter areas. Now I've turned my work upside down to make sure that the flow of the paint goes in the direction that I need it to. I'm rewetting the paper. You can do it with a brush or a spray bottle, depending on what you've got handy. So now I'm adding water before and after paint application. You can apply different colors and let them merge naturally together. Don't worry too much if the paint goes outside of your object lines or subject lines. This is all part of this level 3 looseness painting style. With this level, you don't need to worry about going over or certain colors running into each other. It's all part of the painting process. While all of this is still damp, you can see that some edges are forming really sort of a harsh lines. And I'm okay with this happening in some areas, but not others. So I've got this brush that has quite a bit of water on it. And I'm just going to paint the edge with water like this. Please ignore my cat. He just wants attention. And you leave it like this. If it still collects and too much of a harsh line is forming, you can remove a little bit of water off your brush and then just go over and soften the edges. You can always just leave things as they are though as well, so it's entirely up to you. Don't be afraid to add pops of color and let the colors merge. And now it's time for a granulation medium. I'm going to use a pipette for dispersing it through the paint. And you can see how this non-granulating color that I have on my palette with the help of the granulating medium turns into this little sort of a sedimented, beautiful patterns. You can always add granulating medium to your water or to your paint on the palette, but I just find dripping it on the painting creates the most movement. If some of the previous layers that are still damp are merging, it's okay. Leave them, let them merge. There's nothing wrong with that. Okay, so now it's almost dry. There are some damp areas here. Not to worry, I'm going to be working on this bottom area here. So this is dry. So on the dry, I'm applying some of the burnt umber in a reasonably strong, intense way. I also got this water. This is just water, just plain water. Now I'm picking up blue on the brush and just dabbing this blue here and there. Okay, so now I've washed my brush, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to just go through the blue and the brown and just do this like a, you know, like when kids doodle, that kind of a thing. Like that. And over this, I'm going to add salt. Now I'm going to do a similar thing on the other side, but just a little bit smaller. A lot of the times, salt is applied onto wet paint which was painted over white paper. But you can also use salt when the paint is painted over a lighter shade that has been perfectly dried previously. And that way you will get the reveal of the layer that was created before. Can create really beautiful layered salt effects. Now let's define some of the flowers by negative painting. Now again, turning it upside down and carrying on, work on the flowers and the blooms themselves. To keep the flower details on the looser side, make sure that you're using a brush that seems a little bit too big for the detail. You can also remove your glasses at this stage as well, if you need to wear glasses when you're painting. A little bit of the red through the greens. Okay, now everything needs to dry once again, and then we can carry on with the centers of the flower. Let's remove the masking fluid or blocking medium, sometimes it's also called. You can do it with your finger or with the eraser. Okay, and now all I have to do is add a little bit more of that sort of a looseness through other ways of applying paint. I'm going to get a little bit of yellow just in here, just a little bit, you know, these little bits and pieces. You don't need to be super precise, just dabbing a little bit of color on does the job. Just adding a little bit of the darkness just to create a bit more contrast in value of the artwork. And now here what I'm doing is I'm just holding the brush almost by the tip, and with the tip of the bristle just doing little squiggles to liven the composition a little bit with smaller and more, give a bit more movement, I'd say, to the artwork. Okay, so this is a level 3 where there's more looseness, more chaos, but at the same time, remember that these are representational ways. So this is still very clear what the subject matter is. Now that they're all dry, let's have a look at all 3 different levels of looseness in representational or somewhat realistic art. We have technique number 1, which is good for anyone who is just beginning to work with watercolor. It can be a great warm-up as well, where you've got a separate area that has quite a bit of water, and then you add maybe a couple of colors or 1 color or 3 colors, doesn't matter, and you let them blend together in a natural and fluid way. These areas are quite small, fit within your whole artwork like a puzzle. Now here I showed you on the white paper, it doesn't have to be, you know, you can do a background or whatever it is that you want. And now the level number 2 is when we're getting a little bit more free, but we're getting this freeness on larger works and just in some areas, maybe isolated areas, bigger than the number 1, but not covering everything, unless of course you're working on a small artwork like I did in this demonstration. So the first layer consists of larger areas of free-flowing colors. You're letting them merge into each other, and that's how you can receive these really beautiful, the glow, the halos that can beautifully enhance your paintings. The next layer, of course, is much more controlled. You can see the sharp edges and very precise placement. And also, level number 2 is where the paint becomes very important. You want a reasonable good paint. You want to make sure you are using the kind of paint that you want, either transparent or opaque, or maybe even granulating. Now, level number 3 is when you saw we went in with very similar way that we did level 2, but we've got a larger work. It's much harder to do this on a smaller format. So we've got larger area to work on. This is probably the smallest that I would suggest for something like this. We first covered everything with water. We went in there, created the background, worked in layers, and each layer had its own way of looseness. The first layer was merging the colors together, then some salt to create this sprinkle here and there. Then I went over for more of the defined colors. I wanted to show you that you can still get away with some sharpness, some details, even though this is a loosely painted artwork. You know, we didn't go in and, you know, very carefully layered one layer upon another, you know, each petal separately and so on. So this is still very loose, very free-flowing, but you can create very realistic effect. As long as you let the layers dry between application, you can layer them up and create very rich, strong colors, even though you're still using the looseness. Then we also use things like dabbing a bit of color, you know, looseness with the tip of the brush and so on. So you can see how you can really bring all of these very painterly techniques together. But now, just like I promised you guys, we are going to do a technique number 4. Now, why I wanted to separate this technique is because it's quite different from this. It's, even though you can still see what it is, it's not completely abstract or it's just color, it is kind of moving away from the representational and really heading towards abstract, stylized, whatever you want to call it. So let's get on with the technique number 4. But before we get into the actual painting, I want to show you the mediums and other bits and pieces that we're going to use to create the incredible flow of this technique. Oxcal. So it is usually used as our wetting agent, so something that helps the water to flow freely. But I really want to show you what happens to paint when this is actually added into the paint. So for example, here I'm just going to do 2 very similar sized spots, and I'm just going to, this is plain water. Okay, guys, so this is plain water. 1, 2, let's do 2 drops, okay? And I'm just going to spread that water. Now I'm just going to pick up the paint. Just do like a line here, like that. You can see how well it spreads. Now let me show you what happens when I add this Oxgal medium to my paint. So for that, I'm actually going to use these little tubes just to help me mix the paint. So I've added a little bit of paint in there already, and now I'm just going to put 1 drop. So there's very little of it there, so just 1 drop of it there, and the rest goes back into the bottle. You really want very little of it in there. Now I'm going to just take a little stick and mix it all up quite well. The paint was already pre-diluted, so I've added a little bit of water on my palette. If you're using a tube, you can just squeeze a little bit in there. Now the same thing here, 2 little drops of water. And now make sure that this is really well combined. As I said, I mixed it with a stick before, so now I'm just going to go in, pick a little bit of that paint and just touch this a little bit. Now can you see how much further it travels? Just another quick comparison. So here is just plain water and paint, and here is plain water and paint that's been pre-mixed. So I just thought I'd do it with a brush, because here I kind of didn't think about it. I did it with the dropper, so you know, maybe a different amount or whatever can do this. So I thought I'll just do another one. But see, here is the same amount of paint, but you can see how much quicker it travels through. So it's a perfect medium for those of you that love to create these really large sort of areas that fill up with paint. And this is the technique that I'm going to be using. In the fourth demonstration, I'm going to use the same paper that I used in the technique number 3, but this time I'm not going to put any kind of tape around it. I'm not going to do any pencil drawings or anything like this. Oh, and I forgot to mention that for this technique you can also use liquid watercolor as well. So it just makes it a little bit easier mixing it rather than having to go through the palette mixing and then adding it in the air with the dropper and so on. So it helps you to fasten that stage a little bit. Now for this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the largest brush that was sent in the set for this technique. Okay, another thing I wanted to point out is that with this technique I have my paper quite flat, so I don't have it upright one way or the other. So here we go. So first thing I want to do is I'm going to create this almost like an oval thing here on paper just with using water, and I want quite a bit of water as well. Now I have my pre-mixed paint here with the ox gall medium, so I'm just going to put a little drop here like that, and then watch carefully. I'm going to, because this is all wet, if it's drying just add a bit more water like this. Then with the tip of the brush I'm just going to go in and I'm going to make that sort of a touching. Here we go. Can you see this? Can you see this flow? Now what we can do, if you want it to flow more one way or the other, you can lift it up and move it, sort of help it, create more movement and so on. This is also a good time to add any other colors as well if you want to. Look at that beauty go. Just can you see that? Look at it. Look how stunning this is. This is what I mean. Going with the flow without worrying about it looking like a flower, looking like something else, or not looking like anything at all. I also have this liquid watercolor gold paint. I got it quite a few years ago on my trip when I was in Rome, I think. I bought this, or was it in France? I can't remember now. It was either Paris or Rome. It's a really beautiful sort of a golden color. When I bought it, I thought it was ink, so I could do like calligraphy writing with it, but it worked really badly for calligraphy. So then I actually read and I found out that it's actually watercolor. Same thing here, just a little bit of it, but I'm gonna just drip a little bit onto the wettest areas like that. Just maybe a couple of little spots. There we go. And again, we can tilt it around and help it move a little bit. Oh, that's beautiful. There's a little bit of gold that's just going over to the blue. Now you can always use granulating medium in here, salt. There are so many different things that you can use from the previous techniques that we've used as well. The one thing that I do want to point out is that with each progression as we move along, I would encourage you to use better quality paint. And the reason for that is that you want a really strong intensity, that beautiful effect. It's much harder to achieve that with student grade paint. And if we look at that first little sketch that we did here, we just created a little bubble of water and put some paint in there, kind of something like this, but on a much smaller level, much more controlled. You can get away with using more of the student grade. You can also experiment with different brands, like for example, Core watercolor paint tends to push itself through the water because it has a synthetic binder. Sometimes different colors can work differently, so some colors push through stronger than others, and even if you have them side by side, one color will push the other one out of the way. So you can experiment more with those kind of things to find out what it is that you might prefer. Okay, now let's get back to this, and I'm going to do another semi-balloon like this here. And this is just, I don't even have a reference or anything like this right now, guys. As I said, this is semi-abstract art. Just remember that the paint should be as thick as possible, but also fluid at the same time. You don't want to go straight from the tube. Look at that. This Oxgal medium is the most beautiful thing if you love these free-flowing things. Look how feathery it is. I think it's something to do with maybe like a little bump in the paper or something, because there's almost like this lighter area and then a darker area. And what's also quite interesting is that it's like an indigo color, but it's splitting, and in some areas there's a little bit of pink. I don't know if it was in my brush or whatever, but there are some areas where it separates. It's very interesting. Normally I haven't, well, I have seen it separating a little bit, but this is it's quite beautiful, except for some areas here, but this one's really damp. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave these all to dry. I don't want too much movement, so I'm not going to use a hair dryer. If you want more movement, you can actually direct the paint flow with a hair dryer. I do have that technique in one of my previous videos. But this is just something that I need to leave there to dry. Okay, you guys, this has been drying for quite a while. It's actually becoming evening now. I've been filming this for over 2 days, and this is the evening of the second day. So I'm just going to reabsorb this little bit here that's a little bit wet, because I don't want it to dilute the rest, or because it's quite watery now here, so I want the paint to be quite strong. And so now I'm going to create another little circle that somewhat overlaps this one. Because this is watercolor, and I know it is perfectly dry now and everything, but because if we sort of rub around it, it can, it can leak out again and sort of start to mix up with the next layer, and I don't want that to happen. I'm going to go really gently over this area here. So, oh yes, even if you try gently, it still does it a little bit. But these brushes are just lovely for this sort of thing. They're very gentle. So one circle, semicircle, like a oval, I would say, here. And now the same thing. Just lifting it up a little bit here to make it move a little bit forward. It's lifting up a little bit, but it's okay. It's only lifting up where the paint is really intense. You can see how it's sort of... But anywhere where it's dry, it's staying put, which is great. This gold paint, I think it's quite thick. I've never used this brand with any other shades or anything like this. I just have the gold. And I think it's just, it stays put quite a bit, so it's a little bit hard to make it spread and move around as much as the regular watercolor. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this tube here to blow through it and try and sort of agitate it a little bit. If you have seen my other tutorial where I show you how to use water to create beautiful watercolor effects, this is one of the techniques that I showed in that video. It's quite strange. It almost moves, pushes the paint away, this gold. I've just added a little bit more. Ooh, that's the thing. When you start to work loose, it just paint gets the mind of its own and it does what it wants. See, we've got even this little drop here. So now I'm going to do a similar thing on the other side. And as the blue paint comes over the gold and then pours back, it takes that sort of a sandy kind of a, texture of the iridescent paint down with it. It almost reminds me of the beach, when the beach comes in and the water, the seawater, and picks up a little bit of sand with it. And now very quickly, I'm going to speed all of this up. I'm going to do the same thing on this little flower here. I'm going to make this a little bit more compact, and this one will be a little bit more open. So all the same steps, everything the same. Another thing that I'd like to mention is when your painting dries, I would suggest that you go over it with a hair dryer. So what that would do is it will actually help you to dry out the watercolor on the paper as much as possible, so that when you are applying the next layer, it's not going to become re-wetted very quickly. So you're giving yourself the best chance of keeping the previous layer intact. And don't beat yourself up if the paint still comes undone. Like you can see here, it is watercolor. This is what it's designed to do. Now for this next layer of petals, I would like to create a situation where there is water, but there isn't so much water that it's really piling up everywhere. And now, rather than applying it and then merging it, I'm actually going to apply the same paint, you know, still pre-mixed with ox gall medium, but on the brush, just tiny little bit on my brush. And I'm just going to do this. Just on the edges like that. Ooh. Ooh, cat, no, don't step. Phew. Phew, you guys. Oh my god, this is just dangerous. So dangerous. He was like 5 centimeters away from stepping into a puddle. Okay, so just going like this. Now, if you want to create a more intense color, just go in and dab again. No, 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 not again, not again. Get out, cat, get out. So here we go. You can do little circles, little spots. And now a very similar thing on the other side. Now this kind of technique is absolutely perfect for super large areas, because then you can just go in and even just, you know, like these little tubes that I showed you, right? You can even just pour the paint onto the paper and just create these magnificent, stunning, large artworks. And the same thing with the gold, just the tip of the brush. And you can just add little bits and pieces here and there if you want to. And now the same thing with this flower, but here I'm just going to create even smaller little petals because I want to keep this flower a little bit smaller than that one. And now, just like before, I'm going to leave this all to dry. Okay, now I want to show you something really cool. So see, I've just deposited a little bit of that paint, the blue paint. Now I'm going to kind of semi-absorb the moisture from this brush so that it's damp, but it's not dripping with water. And now just holding it like that by the edge here, so that, you know, I get this sort of a interesting kind of a wiggle in the brush. And because this is so flexible as well, but also still holds its shape, you know, it doesn't sort of go, you know, sometimes brushes kind of go like that and then they stay like this. This one springs back. I love it. But that's my personal preference. So I'm just gonna take it like this, and then with just the tip of the brush, you see, I'm taking that intense color and I'm dragging it. And now the same thing here as well. Okay, what do you guys think? I mean, we can probably stop here if you wanted to. We could add little bits and pieces, you know. You can see this is floral, but this is not a representation of real life. You can't even tell what kind of flower this is. This is very paint doing its own thing. We can always add little things, like I can do similar stuff that I did here with this. I can do this with gold as well. So just a little drop here, like that. Even just do it like that, without the brush, just with a dropper. By the way, you guys, this here is just this on its own, without the ox gall, so quite interesting. It's really thick. I guess now looking at it, this is why I think I thought it was an ink. So here we go. And remember, you guys, you can play with this. It is a little bit difficult to do this on a small size, you know, like those sketchbooks that I've used for the first 2 levels of looseness in watercolor. This is a little bit more difficult because you do want to give it a little bit of space to really merge together, especially if you're using this medium with your watercolor, because then you saw how it just really helps it to spread. For the blue, I was using a mix of 2, a liquid watercolor from Schminker, and I also use my tube paint as well, just to make it a little bit thicker, but still have a little bit of a runny texture, and then having a little bit of this and a couple of drops of water. And you can see just how amazing these techniques can be. This was floral. I don't even know why everything was floral. I think maybe because I went to the park a few days ago and just saw all these beautiful flowers. But I can show you how to do the same thing with anything. Trees, landscapes, still life, anything you'd like. I can also break it down and show you a few different techniques. So let me know in the comments. I look forward to reading them. Okay, and now those of you who are looking for a review for these new products that I've been using. Now, I really wasn't disappointed in these brushes. These are perfect. If you take into consideration how much they cost, I think this is an incredible value. Now, you guys, I'm not paid to say anything. It's just my opinion. So, and you know how a lot of the times if there is something wrong with a product, or I think it can be done in a better way, or, you know, comparing it to some other high-end materials. Now, this is hands down perfection. I know, I don't think that there's anything that I would change about this. There's no way that I can think of improving it, because the bristle is perfect. It's perfect in a way that it can hold a lot of water, just like a real squirrel. At the same time, it holds its shape better than the real squirrel. If you look at the tip is always perfectly small, and you saw how I literally used one brush for each tutorial. So I have 4 different demonstrations, and you can see how even though this brush is quite small, it still holds an incredible amount of water for the size. And of course, it's got the really nice tip. This brush is quite versatile as well, because it's a little bit bigger, it still holds quite a bit of water, and the point is also just perfect. This brush is getting even bigger. So this brush, I probably would not use it for smaller sized works like this, but you could still get away with it. Like if you had to, if someone twisted your arm and said, look, here is a big brush and you need to do a small thing, I still could do it with this brush. Even though many other brands, I wouldn't be able to get away with doing everything. Small little details, little points, little spots, dots. You saw me work on with all of those things. Now, this brush is huge, right? It's perfect for larger artworks. The amount of water that it holds, I mean, you saw in that last, 4th sketch that I did for you guys, it holds a lot of water, but the precision that you get with this is incredible. It's like, I don't know, like you can get away with creating things that you normally would use this kind of brush for. You still can get away with doing all of them with this brush as well. So to me, these are perfect. I absolutely love the handles as well, just how, how perfectly smooth they are. Very, very well designed, very comfortable to hold in your hand. And I also like that they're not super long. If someone asked me, is there something that can be done to make these more perfect? I don't know. There isn't much that I would change about these. These are absolutely great. And I imagine that number 4 will probably be my most go for size, because I work on painting sort of the size, A4 size, when I use watercolor, or when I'm going somewhere traveling and I use watercolor, because normally I usually use acrylic for my own paintings. But with watercolor, it probably would be this. If I'm working on larger watercolor paintings, of course, I'd be using these as well. Or if I'm working on something like number 4, where I need a lot of water. So this would be the one that I would go for. And anything smaller, this brush would be perfect for example, if you've got like a little sketchbook and a little then something like this would be just perfect. And again, because these are so versatile, you need less brushes. That's the beauty about this. I think I definitely could paint a whole painting with these brushes. And I love quill brushes. I love round brushes as well for watercolor. The only other brush that I think sometimes I would need is a liner brush, like for, say, for example, if I'm doing like power lines or something like this in the painting. But other than that, I think I could do pretty much anything with these brushes. That's my take on these. I love these guys. Like, I'm not joking. I'm like in love with these brushes. Now let's have a look at these other things that I've tested out. So the first book was this one. This is the page from it. I don't want to flip it around because this is all wet still, but that little flower sketch that I did, so came out of this book. Now the perfect thing about this is that it's so easy to take with you when you're on the go, right? You've got a little thing here for the brush, so you can pop one of the brushes, like something like this, for example. You probably could even fit a couple of brushes here if you wanted to, or maybe a brush and a pencil if you've got a thin brush, and maybe like a pencil or a pen, depending on what you like using. And then you can even slot a little, you know, those little pocket palettes in, like in here or in here, and you're pretty much good to go. So you can just take this, pop this in your bag and go. I love how this is magnetized and it looks very nice. Like, I think this is like fox leather. I don't think it's a real leather. The paper, I love it. It's 300 GSM cold pressed paper. Again, this is one of the, I think this is one of my favorite papers that I've been using, you know, to date, that are budget papers, because this is 100% cotton, 300 GSM, cold pressed. It's got a really soft texture on it, so it's not like super rough. So for this size, it's perfect. And it's just, it's lovely enough to use it from both sides. You see this here, okay, I'll just flip it over very quickly. You see, this is on this side and this is on the other side. So, which actually means that if you've got this as your traveling journal, you can easily work on both sides. Maybe you want to paint something on one side and then write something on the other, or, you know, do whatever you please. But it is a really, really nice, very thick, very lovely paper. Another thing that I really like about this paper, and it's the same paper in here as well, also cold pressed, and it's my favorite kind of paper for watercolor. This paper is great because of its versatility, you can say, as well. Quite white, so all the colors really glow. It is quite absorbent, so it absorbs the water. It holds the water really well, being 300 GSM. You know how Archer's cold pressed paper, it has that almost like sandpaper kind of a feel when you touch it, you know? It almost sometimes takes a couple of layers of wetting it before it starts to accept the water quite well. It sort of has a little bit of that, but not as far as the Archer's paper does. If you want to get into details and things like that, it also is quite quick to sort of absorb the water in. And I'm not really sure. This is why I love this so much. It holds the water in there, so if you want to, you can go back in and add more colors without forming blooms and things like that. But if you want to get into details, the top layer is quite dry, so it doesn't sort of spread too much either. It has a little bit of both worlds, and that's why I am really excited about especially using this book. I love the shape of it. I love how it's elongated, very, very special. And in my local art shop, you know, you get sort of a small sketchbooks like this, or sometimes you get a larger sketchbook, you get more square, but they all sort of stay within this kind of a shape, more or less. But this is quite unique, I think, in the way that it's quite long. Maybe you guys have these kind of shapes as well in your shop. This is a very new, very interesting format for me. It also has this little ribbon, I guess, just to make it a bit quicker to get to the page where you left off. The cool thing as well is that it has this little pocket here on the back. If you have any kind of things that you want to keep in there, you can do so easily. A rubber band as well, so that way you know it's not going anywhere. So even if you've got some stuff in there, it's just going to keep everything like that together. And I guess you can always have a brush as well, sort of sitting in there like that. So yes, today's video, I'm definitely giving lots of stars, whatever the stars are, for the brushes and for this. I really am blown away by these brushes, even though I already had a little brush like similar to this that I was using, but just having them in all these different sizes, just seeing how magnificent this brush is with holding so much water. I'm absolutely in love with all the products that I've tested out today. Again, all the info if you'd like to look into how much it costs to get it delivered, or you just want to see more about the quality or whatever, all the links are under the video, so you can check those out. And thank you so very much for hanging out with me and painting today. Again, I want to say thank you so much to my lovely, lovely patrons who are supporting this channel. You guys are the best. I look forward to seeing you either on Patreon next or in the next video, which will come out in a probably couple of weeks' time. So hope you guys have a lovely, lovely day, and I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.